Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Perception Paradox. My name is Javila, and I'm your host. And today we are trying to answer the question: what happens when you realize that the successful life you've built was never truly yours? And today I'm joined by Natalini, co founder and CEO of the KOKO Foundation, whose journey took her from global stages and rooms filled with political leaders and celebrities to completely questioning her identity, career, relationship, and even her name. We talk about grief, trauma, psychedelics, healing, and what it takes to reclaim ownership of who you are. Natalini shares why she left behind the identity created for her, why she moved to Spain, to the island of Mallorca, and rebuilt a life grounded in creativity, community, and her own definition of success. We also explore why creativity may become our greatest human advantage in the age of AI, and why designing an unconventional life might be the most natural thing you can do. So, welcome to Perception Paradox, and let's dive in. Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Welcome to Perception Paradox. We had to wait for this moment to happen. We met nearly a year ago now, very soon, counting that 1 year, at Web Summit, was it? One of the side events in the
Yeah.
terrace. I don't know, I was just passing by and I'm like, hi, how are you? And you
Yeah,
were
that's true.
open, proactively engaging in conversation, and then we just started talking. Then one of my friends who came to see me, Simon, joined us, if I remember it correctly, and yeah, and we had a nice chat. And later on,
I
bumping into the Web
remember.
Summit.
I have this thing because I've been going to conferences and sort of like events my whole life. And at the beginning, I used to get really nervous to be on my own and to not know anyone and to have to like work the room, this whole thing. But with time and with experience, I learned to like be still and stay on my own and trust that the right people will always come to me. I always meet the right people. And it's very uncomfortable because it is uncomfortable to be standing on your own in a room full of, people that are talking to each other and know each other. But it always works. It really always works. I always meet the people I meet. It's never networking in the traditional sense of the word. I always meet people that would resonate. We would resonate with each other and would turn into like a meaningful relationship down the line. So you're one of them. Yeah.
Wow, that is so refreshing to hear. But because when it comes to networking and all those official tactics, I've never done that, and I feel like I'm so bad to come and to be a very salesy or push. And yes, you come with an intention, but I'm like, you can resonate a lot. You kind of attract the people, and perhaps also that matches your current chapter, your current work, your current
Exactly.
mission, reflection. So that was really, really cool. And we got straight into quite a nice conversation about you reshaping your identity and how actually you managed to change from the life that everyone from a side maybe would be dreaming about or seeking for when it comes to the career, success, network, to actually to something that was close to your heart through lots of heart internal work. Uh, well, I guess very good
Yeah.
opening would be when did that all click that you're maybe living not your own destiny line and you needed a change, or maybe that the chapter has finished of something that you have to fulfill?
That's interesting. I wonder if there is like a one moment when it clicks. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't remember like a click, but I remember that at one point my body started to really send signals. I started having a lot of gut issues that were making it actually impossible for me to keep going the way I was going. And so my body really slowed me down. It kind of forced me to slow down. And in the pain and the discomfort that I had to deal with, a lot of questions started to come up, and then I think I think, the journey of self-discovery and the journey of like getting to understand who you are is magical. And I really think all it takes is for you to agree, to agree to take that journey. And then life starts to take you, and starts to take you to, I don't know, to the right places, or introduce you to the right people, or I don't know, send you a book that you need to read. It's just a series of like these magical sort of little signs and little support kind of um, experiences that come along the way. But a very, very pivotal moment for me was, I think, the most kind of important thing was my father passed away when I was 33 or 32. Actually, yeah, 4 days before my birthday. And that unlocked a huge process of of asking questions and looking for answers, and then finding the answers, and then having to deal with the answers, and all of that.
Hmm. And we speak a lot about the change and the growth and the healing and finding the answers. What was your method and tools that you kind of found along the way to find those answers and to do the shift?
Mm, For me, it started with questions. I think the most important thing a person can do is ask themselves questions. And then each question is it's like a portal, and then life kind of takes you there. But I remember shortly after, my father's death, I was in this very dysfunctional 7-year-long relationship with a man. I was in this very successful career, going for, at that point, probably also around 7 or 8 years with the same organization. But it was a very intense and rather unhealthy environment. And like on the outside, I was doing great. Like you would look at back then, my Instagram, and I was totally like living the life, as society would expect, as what they sell you in magazines and movies and all that stuff. And I was feeling unwell. And I remember at some point I realized that I was living my boyfriend's idea of what a good life is. And I was living my grandmother's idea of what a good career is. And I had absolutely no clue what my idea was. I just didn't know. And it started with that realization. And then it started with that question. The question was, what do I want? What do I want? Or what is my dream? And it was really scary to ask that question because I had no clue. Like there was no answer. There was just this vacuum and like complete silence on the other side. And I wrote it on a piece of paper and I put it on the mirror in my bathroom. And so every morning and every night when I'm brushing my teeth, I would just look at it. I would look at it and I would be with the emptiness that it carried. And then, as I said, things started to shift. Just because that question was so present, things started to shift. The relationship started to crumble. I started questioning, the relationship. My boyfriend at the time, he had such a clear idea of how he wanted life. And, an apartment here and whatever, holidays in this place. And like, he just had it so clear. And I never, ever questioned that. I just took it on. And the moment I started questioning it, the relationship started to crumble because I wasn't in such complete compliance anymore. And so I realized that, oh, okay, so if I try to be myself in that relationship, this relationship won't survive. And similar things started happening in my work. I started kind of pushing a little bit that kind of dynamic that we were operating within for so many years. And I started seeing how the rest of the team was reacting to it, and I started sort of becoming a little bit more aware of how how this works and how my agreement to be whoever other people need me to be and to turn into whatever they need me to be was critical for this to exist, be it career, job. Even though I was a CEO of a nonprofit organization, I was in a leadership position, but still I was completely behaving as expected. I wasn't necessarily leading in an authentic way. And then the same thing was going into my relationship. And so the question started like breaking that equilibrium, started like messing around with the system, and then in terms of tools, I think the first thing that happened for me is I started reading a lot of interesting books. I started opening up to like meditation and spirituality and sort of introspective, systems, even if you wish, like things like human design. And I mean, I'm very passionate about the gene keys. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That came later in my journey.
Yeah, I am familiar actually.
That came later. And then I think slowly I started kind of finding the courage and the strength to get out of both the job and the relationship and to walk that difficult path of self-discovery. And the biggest tool for me was, first of all, finding the right people, meeting people that share these values and understand what it means and what it takes to look and find yourself in a way. How should I say that? In a deep way and in integrity with the process, without cutting corners and all that. And then the really, really big thing for me was discovering psychedelics. That played a really important part in my journey of finding those answers and then healing, from the answers that were sitting anyways, locked in my base, right? So yeah, in a nutshell.
Wow. That's a very powerful story, and especially women in the society, we hear very often that we do alert that something is not working, but I I could see many not taking the leap to actually commit to the change, to get to that other side of the hill, because you have to pay the price.
Yeah.
How did you find the courage to actually go and to allow yourself to explore those tools, those different environments that you knew that is going to completely perhaps shift your life and going to put you outside your comfort zone, even though perhaps it not necessarily was a comfort zone?
Look, I would love to sit here and tell you that I was very courageous and I was this amazing woman. But the truth is, I think there was a great deal of ignorance and not understanding what I was actually what I was actually coming up against, not understanding how difficult it would be. And I really want to say I'm still in it. I'm still very much in a process. It's still very difficult, but I feel like right now, let's say it's been maybe 3 years I've been doing this. Now I'm more comfortable with the process. Like I'm familiar with what it takes, and that makes it more manageable. Doesn't make it easier, So I think my courage came from ignorance. But then I think also once you start walking that path and you start even a little bit connecting to yourself and just discovering your true self and who you truly are, that feeling of just connection within, not desperately and anxiously looking for connection outside, but connection within, having even the slightest taste of that was like you're discovering El Dorado. It's like, wow, this feels incredible. And I get a glimpse of who I am, and I want to know more. I want to know myself, it's almost like you meet this, it's almost like you meet a person and that person is you, and now there is this curiosity, and of course with connection comes, I think, love. You discover, the more you connect to yourself, the more you start to love yourself, and the more you're willing to fight for yourself. And many times, look, like in the past couple years, many times I've regretted taking that journey, and I've wanted to like walk away and go back, and go back to not knowing, and go back to my old life, and you know wanting to quit, because it really is very hard. But I think for me, the most important thing that happened, that I'm so grateful, was I really found a community. I found friends to do this with. I found people that were on the same journey, people that were up against similar things, people that could understand, people that would hold me when I need it. And I would hold them back. And just this sort of this support is what played the most important role, I think, in those
Mhm.
moments where you really want to quit, even though you can't really quit. It's like the Matrix, the blue and the red pill. And like once you take it, there isn't really going back, but you flirt with the idea, I guess, you know?
I love it. You flirt with an idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that one of the tools that helped you to find those answers to heal as well, where it was psychedelics. And right now in the
Mm-hmm.
society, we have a very hot topic, and lots of people straight diving into it without maybe preparation and guidance, sometimes maybe too early. How
Yeah.
did you navigate this journey in a safe way?
Yeah. Um, Absolutely. I think the psychedelic kind of renaissance is as positive as it can be negative. I think it's kind of like it goes both ways, because when you use these extremely powerful plants and substances with not the right guidance, and not the right level of understanding of how to navigate, it can be very damaging. In my case, luck was along the way the whole time. Luck was along the way. I was very lucky. I met a person that is a psychedelic psychotherapist, and I was able to do mm, almost all of that work with him. And he came from strong background of psychotherapy for decades, and then also decades of experience of working with psychedelics for psychotherapy. He was not a shaman. He was a product of our Western world, which I think also worked in my favor, because he was able to adapt these kind of experiences to an environment that is, and context that is familiar for me. I've done, obviously, journeys and ceremonies with tribes in the jungles and all of that, but that came later, when there was already enough understanding and enough experience and enough integration, and I could go and honor them, and it was beautiful. But I didn't necessarily go to heal. And this is really just my experience, because I think everyone has a very, very unique journey, and I don't think there's really a formula. But what happened for me was I was able to work with, and I've done a lot of things. I've done MDMA assisted therapy. That's the first thing I ever did, was, and it's the first time I ever tried MDMA in my life, was for therapy. I've done LSD, assisted therapy. And then I've done a lot of work with psilocybin. And the most kind of life-changing experience that I had was with the sacred wood of Eboga, which is not so popular and not so known, but is considered sort of, they say, the Everest of psychedelics. It's considered the strongest psychedelic in the world. And that plant found me in the most magical way, and really, I would say it saved my life. So that's the most kind of like, I guess, appreciation and love I have for Eboga.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And
Mm.
how do you prepare for such experience? Do you just then dive in, even with the therapy, right? You just come and go for unexpected, or you do some kind of earlier preparation and intention setting and honor the plant? What's actually the flow with that?
Mm. The first time I did it, I didn't do it in a ceremonial way. I again did it with a psychotherapist. Um, I was in a really big crisis in my life at that time, and so it was a good time to work with the plant because I was open, like I was going through a big sort of heartbreak, and I was in a lot of emotional turmoil. So it was a great moment to work because there was already like the vulnerability was present. The wounds were open, let's say, and so. Um, Again, ignorance. I had no idea what I was getting into. Like, I mean, people tell you, people are like, oh, wow, this is really heavy. And like, oh, it's going to be really tough. And have you ever done it? And have you heard? And they start telling you things. But I think until you actually experience it, you can't possibly imagine how difficult it is because there's no reference for that. You can't compare this to anything. And, ignorance was really helpful because I think if I knew, probably I wouldn't have done it, or I would be way more scared and way more kind of resistant, maybe. But I didn't prepare, and that's not good. Don't do it that way. I think the possibility arose, and 48 hours later, I was in. But it was like
It
I
was meant
just
to
knew
be.
it. I
You
knew
just
it.
knew in inner. That's a preparation.
Yeah, I think one thing that really developed for me over time through that journey was my intuition. There's been moments during that journey where I just know, and nothing can stop me from doing whatever I need to do. Like nothing can stand in the way, and Eboga was one of those things. Like I had absolute certainty, and there was no room for doubt or to wonder or to evaluate. It was an absolute yes, and I'm really grateful. I think to this day, my intuition, I really trust her fully. So yeah, no, I didn't really prepare much. At the time, I was like, as I said, really in a crisis. I was living in a very unhealthy way. I had a lot of gut issues still. My body was, I used to smoke cigarettes. I had marijuana addiction. I wasn't doing very well with alcohol. So I was in a really rough place. And my body needed it. It needed that brutal healing and brutal reset that Eboga gave me. But I haven't, but since then I haven't touched tobacco. I have completely like way more. I have a connection to my body that I didn't used to have before. I have love, appreciation, gratitude, and so much care for my body. And I never used to have that. So I don't want to harm my body anymore, and that's like, wow, it's worth the hardship of the journey.
Wow, so it seems like Iboga kind of opened up for you this kind of new connection with your inner self, which when I'm listening to you, I'm very happy to hear that. It seems like you've spent your whole life in a way serving, working with lots of nonprofits, with lots of communities, with lots of impactful changes on the both very high level and also on the ground level. Where did you get this whole courage and strength then to be in such a strong position, influential position, when you were missing that inner strong connection, if I understood it
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Um, this is where my grandmother comes in the whole story. So I was raised, I was born in late 80s in communist Bulgaria. And my grandparents were, on my father's side, were politicians. My grandmother was a very powerful woman. She was a general secretary for culture for the Communist Party and was very influential. She was one of few people that were basically curating the entire, cultural kind of experience for the nation, choosing, communism was very sort of controlled in terms of which artists get to publish, which artists get to be seen. And so she was really one of the people that were kind of part of that mandate. And I was 3 years old when communism collapsed, and my grandmother went into a huge crisis. There was like a moment of, I think, I don't remember now, but she was hospitalized for a moment. I mean, it was a huge shock for everybody, right? My family, more, I think, more so because part of my family was really part of the system. And anyways, after the we transitioned into like a brand new sort of capitalist regime, my grandmother became, went from being very influential, very powerful, to really being a nobody, and not just being a nobody, but being not appreciated for her legacy, because the elite changed completely. And so she was no longer a hero. She was actually the opposite. And I think, she really focused on raising me and kind of turning me into her natural kind of the natural continuation of her career was me. And I was very studious. I was very ambitious. I was always into like succeeding. That was, she didn't force that into me. I had it already, but the direction that it took was very much dictated by her. And so ever since I was I think, I don't know, like 10, 12, 13 years old, she started kind of raising me to be a politician, and that kind of agenda was always there. And I was always prepared for, for a big career, for working really high level, for becoming whatever. In her dream world, it was either, a minister or a prime minister or a president. And there's never been a female president in the history of the country. So I was going to be the first one. And so I was raised with that narrative, so success was not only not optional, it was a condition for me to be loved and appreciated by my grandmother and my grandparents in general. And people sometimes wonder, like, but where were your parents? My parents were not, my father was not really present. My mother was really had to like work and make money because, somebody had to do it. And so I was raised to a great extent, to a great degree by my grandparents. So having my grandmother's love and appreciation was critical for my survival. So I needed to make sure that I deliver on whatever her agenda was, So, and it showed in my education. Like I was always top of the class. I went to the best universities, no matter what it costs, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter if I believe in it, no matter if I love it. None of that mattered. It was this. I mean, it's insane how much energy we have when we are surviving. When you're in this survival mode and needing to make sure that your caretakers love you and keep loving you, you can do insanely huge things. I mean, that's the one realization I've had in the past couple of years when I started unpacking that. I was like, wow, the fire that was fueling this was all coming from a place of deep fear that if I don't achieve what they need me to achieve, I will not be loved by my family, so that's how I was able to get to the places that I got to. And the thing is, like, once you get there, and you realize that they don't love you more. Um, it's not actually enough. It was never enough. I was never good enough. It always had to be more. Um, then the whole model starts to kind of crack, because you're like, wait a second, like I'm here, I'm doing exactly what you wanted me to do, and you're not seeing it, and then I think that's one of the things also that kind of propelled the journey a few years back. Also her passing away, of course.
That's very strong and powerful journey. And I'm hearing this not good enough, and which is, I think, a very strong narrative. And overall, the whole post-Sovietic bloc, growing up with this, like, you have to be better, you have to get better results, this constant push, and kind of unconscious train for resilience at the end of the day, that there is no as an answer, and you just always have to really aim the best. Do we ever overcome when we are raised like that, this not good enough angle, and that maximalism of everything we do in life?
I think I think I think we overcome the not good enough, and once we start looking within, I think yes. I think yes, but there's value in that. I think once you're able to um, turn it in your favor, we are raised with resilience. We are raised with ambition and with drive, and those are great things. Like, I'm very grateful, even though there were obviously a lot of issues in my upbringing, but I'm very grateful to my grandmother for teaching me to never settle, to dream really big, to know that however hard I've pushed, I can push harder. There's more, you can go higher, and to always ask myself, is this the best I can do? Or maybe I can do better than that. But then not do it in a self-bashing way and in a way to put yourself down, but do it to lift yourself up. And of course, that makes all the difference. But I think once you start going into that, as I said, like, place of connecting to yourself and loving yourself and being kinder to yourself and kind of having a more positive inner dialogue, then the frequency of that kind of energy changes and starts working in your favor.
Mhm.
Where Remind me where you were from, because you also have the communist thing, don't you?
From Lithuania. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So
We're one of the first ones to break the wall, by basically, yeah. I know.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a
That's
similar experience growing up?
um I was very fortunate growing up, I think. I had that experience of this not pushy mindset, but there's high expectations for you as someone who's going to school and having those extracurriculum activities. But I was very fortunate that my environment was very safe and creating for me the space to find myself or choose my own path rather than actually predefining their all dreams. So I've never got into that, and I did not understand that back then, why my parents are not telling me what should I study, or very particular, like all my other friends, they would be very firmly guided to their
Mm,
next career step. But I would get the guidance and the needed support for me to make the decision, but it was never forced until I
nice.
myself
That's
made a decision.
wonderful.
So I'm very grateful for that. So, but then the rest of those qualities, right, is hardworking, that you can always do better, that you don't settle for less in a way. And I'm not talking in a bad way. It's more like you can always do more. The question I think I'm trying to answer all the time: do you need that? Is that something what you see that kind of fulfill you? Or is it something
Mm,
that's expected from you, from the society or the environment you are in? And
mm,
that took me a long time to learn that it's not because I want that, but that's because
mm,
someone else wanted for me instead of me.
mm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think something really magical happens when you sort of detach a little bit from what the world expects from you, and you start wanting for yourself, with this, with, I guess, the same vigor and the same sort of devotion, but but for yourself, and for your truth and for your own kind of realizing your own potential in its whatever it's in its most beautiful, I guess, expression. It's really interesting when that shift occurs.
Yeah, and then if out of the blue, your body aligns with you. You don't get health issues. You don't feel it being forced and things, even something maybe you don't like, but it comes with a light and with an ease. And many years we've been, and even now, sometimes we just ignore, forget that. And when the body screams already, it sometimes can be too deep in the in the down, but there is always a way out. I always say there is nothing you cannot get out yourself out. It's just a new mountain you're climbing. But talking about your change, Natalina, right? One of the most interesting things, and I'm not sure if I met maybe once someone who fully reopened a new chapter in life and even changed the name. How was it for you closing this one chapter of your previous identity and recreating a new one? Or a continuity of maybe chapter 2 of who you were? How did you come up with that, or who planted that inner seed?
Mm. I mean, it was a sequence of so many pivotal moments. First, it was, as I said, the death of my father. And then it was this like looking for answers. And then I started discovering really difficult things about my upbringing, through psychedelics, through therapy, through different things. And I think the hardest thing was I had to come to terms with the realization that I had history of sexual abuse when I was a child, when I was a little girl. And that was the tallest mountain I had to climb, in terms of overcoming trauma and overcoming basically everything that was holding me down and keeping me in these very unhealthy situations. And with that came this like, like first this deep realization that I never belonged to myself, because I was quite young when that happened. And so my connection to my body was hijacked. My identity was hijacked by my grandmother, and I was named by my grandmother. We had identical names, and the thing is, like, her first name, my old name, Talimka, is a very unique name in Bulgaria. So it was just me and her with that name. So it was such a big, distinctive part of who I was my name, because it was just so different. And it was completely mirroring hers. And then, of course, there was this kind of realization of, my God, like I'm living her dream of who I am. And I have no idea who I am because I was so little when all of that happened. And it was just all these like many different sort of factors from my upbringing that led me to the very profound and painful realization that I never really owned my identity. It was taken away from me. Very early, in a very early moment of my life, in a moment where I didn't know who I was back then also. And so I started having this very strong urge that I want to change my name. And for me, it was really such a big deal to do that, because it meant that now I get to reclaim. I get to reclaim who I am. I decide what I'm going to be called. I decide who I am, what I love, how I want my career to go, what projects I do, what are the things that make me happy and don't make me happy, and what is good enough, even if you wish. And it's such a funny thing, though, to change your name, because I had no idea what I'm going to call myself. Like, I knew that I wanted to change my name, but I didn't know, what that name is. And that in and of itself was such a magical journey, because again, like, I put out a question, and just waited for life to to kind of answer, and I think it took maybe a year of wondering and not knowing, but being very, very, very clear that I want to change my name, and that my grandmother's name was just feeling so heavy on me and so unnatural, and I really wanted to get rid of it. And one day I remember I came back to Bulgaria I think for Christmas, and I went into my mother's bedroom, and I had given her, for another, I think for her birthday or something, a picture frame. And the name of the brand of the picture frame was Natalini. And she kept the picture frame without putting the actual picture in it. So there was the picture frame with the brand of the frame in it, written in it. And the moment I saw it, I absolutely knew. I was like, oh my God, that's my name. It finally appeared.
Wow.
And so it was also really funny because at the time I moved to Mallorca, and I came to the island and nobody knew me. And I had just discovered this name, and I started introducing myself with that name, and nobody knew that there was another name and that there was another like that never occurred. And to this day, it's been now 3 years. People don't know. I mean, I just came here and I became Natalini. And becoming Natalini has been, I think, a very beautiful journey, because I kind of knew from the beginning who she was, but I wasn't that woman at the time. And coming closer and closer and closer to that kind of vision of myself is still, I'm still doing that. It's the most beautiful process.
Wow. What a story. And what does Natalini, what does it mean? What does this name right now associates you with?
I mean, apparently it means little Christmas in Italian.
Wait, and you came back home for Christmas
Yes.
to see that frame with a name. That means Little Christmas.
It's funny. Yeah, I didn't
That's
know.
pretty.
And now it's funny because when I introduce myself, people think I'm Italian, so I need to explain. Well, no, I'm Bulgarian. Oh, but your name is Italian. I'm like, yeah, I know. And you don't want to tell everybody. Well, I changed my name, and that. So it's funny. It brought a lot of Italy in my world. But yeah, it means actually, Natale, I think, means to be born. So in a way, it means a form of rebirth, I think. And the ini makes it like cute and sexy, I think. So
It fits you really well, and that's the way I met you as Natalini in your thriving journey of building or recreating, changing, pivoting your identity. So, what is does new Natalini breathe the air with, and how did your life change from being in the highest boardrooms in a perhaps wearing the hat of someone predefined a bit from outside, and now taking the full ownership of your path and impact work?
what's really funny? Life gave me this really intense challenge, but I appreciate it so much. I um, stayed out of work for a year. And it wasn't a sabbatical. Like I was sort of like, on and off working after I left my long job that I did for 10 years, my previous nonprofit. I, for about 2 years, was like advising different projects here and there, and I was working on myself. And so I knew that I didn't want to really work so hard because I needed to take care of myself. But at some point, I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go back to work. And life was like, no, you're not. And so for 1 year, I stayed in this very, very difficult, oh my God, like super difficult place of like wanting to go back and work and be out there and be creative and be, be successful again and all of that, and not being able to. And at the same time, sitting with the insecurity and uncertainty of not knowing who you are, because like a job and a title defines our identity so much. And I stayed in this like, I don't know who I am because I don't know what my title is. And I've gone through so much change that I don't know this new person. What does she do for a living? Like, I don't know. And it was very hard, but at the same time, very beautiful because I stayed for 1 year um, being who I am, basically, and being surrounded by people that appreciate me for who I am as a human being and not who I am as a career and a profession. And through that, I was able to find out who I am. And then I discovered, I'm very funny and I'm also very creative and I love to cook and I can be very nurturing and I love to dance and I love to bring people together and I'm a very natural community person and I love to take care and care for people and be there for people. And all of these things started being parts of my identity. And it was, oh my God, like very painful process because I really don't want to romanticize it. Like it was so hard to not be working. But at the same time, the gifts of that were incredible because then I went into work with the full knowing of who I am, without it. Who who Natalini is for those people that love her, for those people that really don't care what does she do for a living and who is she out there in the world and all that stuff. So that was really special. I think we need more of that, understanding who we are as humans without the work that we do.
That's golden words. And in your previous chapter, you worked with so many, and even now as well, but on different note, as Natalini and other perhaps different terms. You work with so many uh, well-known people, very powerful global individuals that also in a way perhaps shapes your social circles in a very transactional way. I'm very curious also to learn how did your social circles has changed and how many perhaps new friendships appeared and how many disappeared. Because like if, let's say social example, if you quit drinking alcohol, you will see who are really your real friends at the end of the day and with whom you have more to discuss rather than just having a pint of beer, which is here it's a bit more stronger in a way situation.
Absolutely. Oh God, that was such a big learning. Yeah. So the previous organization, I was part of the team that built it from scratch. I very quickly became the CEO. I was very young. I was like 28, I think, when I became the CEO. I will never forget it. Just so you get a sense, like I was in Davos. I had just hosted an event with Tony Blair. And for the first time in my life, I spoke in public with Tony Blair. This was my first ever being on stage at like this super young age. I was surrounded by so many extremely famous, extremely powerful people. Like I was, that particular trip, I don't know, Naomi Campbell and like people like that. And I was like, where am I? This is surreal. I never, in my wildest imagination, thought that I would be in a place like this. And of course, as someone very young and sort of new in the world of work, I was super inspired. We were changing the world. Our mission at the time was built around the refugee crisis. And so we worked with a lot of governments. We worked with the UN, with UN agencies, celebrities, super high level around, raising awareness and funds and solving How naive, even back then, like solving the refugee crisis. It sounds so cute now. um, and during that trip in Davos, we were celebrating after a very successful trip. And someone from the team said, well, the organization needs a CEO, and the CEO should be, Tali. That's how they used to call me at the time. And I became the CEO. And it was God, like it was crazy. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy ride. I was hosting events with I've had 15 sitting prime ministers in one event, coming to speak at our forums. I've met a number of extremely, famous, influential, all the icons of our time I've met, before I turned 30. So it was a very interesting experience, and one that I think was absolutely meant to happen and meant to be, because it was just so it was so not by the book. There were so many just insane sort of serendipities along the way. But that was the version of me that wasn't really connected to herself. And then pausing, discovering, and reconnecting. And now I've just actually started my new project, which is as co-founder and CEO of the KOKO Foundation, which is another nonprofit that, again, building from the ground up. It's a very, I'm still living in the same world, but this time I get to do it for myself. And I get to do it as myself, and I get to do it for things and values and ideals that I believe in, as me. So what's really changed is what really changed is my just understanding and owning my creativity. That's what really changed, because when I was growing up, I didn't believe that I was creative. I was raised in a way where I needed to study very hard. I needed to be smart. I needed to get grades, and I needed to deliver, and creativity was, my grandmother was like, you're not talented enough. You're never going to be an artist. Forget about it and just focus on, on being smart. And that shaped my identity, and I became smart, and I became productive, and I became efficient, and I became successful, and I hustled, and I delivered, and I could execute, and I was very good at operations and blah, blah. And of course, I was also creative, but I didn't know it, And during those years of working on myself and healing and discovering myself, I connected to my creativity. I realized that I love to dance. And even though I'm not a professional dancer, I am a dancer, and I love to write, and I write poetry, and I write fiction, and it just gives me so much pleasure and joy. And I don't need to be someone on the back of this. It's just really part of my natural expression. It's encoded in me. It's like I carry it. It's like breathing, it's there. And connecting to that natural creativity and really loving it and honoring it led me to building life is just, it's almost funny, building a foundation that that brings credibility to people in need and helps them own a creative identity as a tool for them to discover and build the lives that they deserve, but it's all interconnected. My inner journey completely translates now into my work, and again, here, of course, working with a lot of famous performers and musicians and talent and all of that, but in a different kind of context this time.
In different setting, when it's aligned with your also inner world. And you mentioned that this now work with KOKO Foundation, and the artist you're working and was following your work, and it's incredible to see both emerging artists but also already successful artists, and it seems like you guys just bring it together and create this kind of safe platform and space. So what are those values right now you're driven by to drive that whole foundation and the environment around you?
I think a part of me really dreams to create something that that changes the way people are, obviously for the better, or the way people or the way systems work. But I think in my case, a lot of people talk about systemic change and stuff like that. I think I'm more attuned to like human beings and how they are. And I think my biggest dream is that, the work that I do results in helping people shape themselves in a way that obviously works better for them and their lives. And ideally, having spent now more than almost 15 years in philanthropy, what I really dream of is find ways to help people help themselves. Because one of the biggest problems of philanthropy is, like, even in Bulgarian, we have a saying, we call it a bear's favor, is when you're trying to help, but you're actually harming, because how we help matters. It really does. Helping us in a certain way can create dependency and not really help. It can create conditions for certain, let's say, vulnerabilities or life circumstances to just remain that way. It can perpetuate certain situations rather than resolve them. What I'm really, and I did that. Like, I worked this way in my first rodeo because I was learning, and I was like, okay, let's do this by the book. And like, this is how everyone is doing it. And then after 10 years, I was like, wait a second. When we started this, there was, back then, I can't quote years, but when I started my first project in philanthropy, focused on the refugee crisis, the global refugee population was something like 30 million. And when I left 10 years, it was 110. And you're like,
That's horrible.
okay, that doesn't work. Like, this is not working, and this is not how you do it. And pick your battles. Also work on things that could be resolved and can create a shift and can help people empower themselves so that they don't need you. Like, ultimately, you've done a great job if those people don't need you anymore, and I really think creativity has the power to do that. And not only creativity, but owning a creative identity. Supporting people from going from I'm not creative to I am creative. For me, that's like, it's a quantum leap in how you perceive yourself and how you carry yourself through the world, because it gives you that deep conviction that you can create, and maybe it's as simple as just getting people to draw, or getting people to sing, or getting people to dance, so that they can get into that energy of being creative. But yeah, this is the, I think, the philosophy and the biggest values that I'm bringing into the KOKO Foundation now, and this is the journey we're all kind of embarking on, and hoping that that this time it works.
I love what you're saying, that it's about showing a bit the direction, the guidance, the tools, that inner strength, and then allowing for everyone to actually be sustaining and not just being part of constant need for the help and for the guidance. I love it. I think that's the way to go, to empower people, to show that we're all individuals can do that. And that's incredible. And what's the process, for example, with KOKO Foundation? How do you operate, and how much do you actually step in? And let's say by the end of a year, when we talk, you will say, oh, that was a good beginning and a good start. We continue, and next year are going to be even stronger.
Yeah. Well, what I'm developing at the moment is this program of KOKO is a music venue, a grassroots music venue in Camden, in London. And this year we're celebrating 125 years of history. So the venue has been there for a very long time and has played such an important role in how culture has been shaped over the years, how UK, well, not only UK and internationally, how the music world has evolved, and but also played a really big role in the borough of Camden. And I don't know if you know, I didn't know that Camden is a place where I feel like creativity is the most kind of the most, I don't know, common denominator. Like you walk on the streets of Camden and it's like a carnival on every day.
Yeah.
Every day
Yeah.
of the week is a carnival. And people are just so reckless in how expressive they are, reckless in the best of sense. Like nobody cares, like they're being completely themselves, they're pushing it to the edge, and it's full of these like emerging talent that is just able to try. And I watched this documentary the other day called Camden, and I had no idea, but Dua Lipa started in Camden, obviously Amy Winehouse. Coldplay, Coldplay were performing at empty pubs for
No way.
months in Camden.
In Camden.
Yeah,
Wow.
I didn't know that. Even American band like The Roots discovered their kind of true sort of like that. I mean, they I think they released their first big hit after they spent, I think, some time in Camden. Camden is the place where you can just try. You can be whoever you want to be, and it won't judge you. It won't tell you. It will give you. If you want to perform, you can perform. In a pub, obviously, and for those that are able to really kind of stay with it and grow it and develop it, the next step from pubs in Camden would be either KOKO or the Roundhouse, which is the other big venue in Camden. And so KOKO, which was called Camden Palace in the past, plays this really pivotal role in the development journey of an artist. They would do their debuts in that venue. Once you've made it to the KOKO stage, it means you're on your way. So how we cultivate that with the KOKO Foundation is really important. One thing that we do is, of course, we're building, I'm building on an academy that's already been there, built by my predecessor with the KOKO Foundation, Academy for Emerging Talent and young artists coming from very difficult environments, underserved communities. We give them the possibility, to train with some of the best people in the industry, like the best songwriters, the best producers, the best filmmakers. I mean, one of our ambassadors at the KOKO Foundation is Olivia Coleman. Like she gave a filmmaking workshop last year to, a bunch of young, aspiring sort of directors, actors, and so on at the KOKO Foundation. So that's one thing that we do, and that's very natural, and it's very kind of native, to KOKO. What I'm sort of bringing in now is how can we take creativity to people in need, people that do not consider themselves to be creative, find themselves in rough environments or underserved communities, like they call them in the UK, and how can we support them in them getting creative and eventually owning a creative identity. And so what I'm developing at the moment with the borough of Camden, with the government, is Camden has more than 40% poverty rate, which is very, very, very high, is very high for the UK. At the same time, it's a very rich borough. So the inequality is massive. So they have like all these social housing projects in Camden. They call them the council estates, where people from underserved communities are living. So what we're doing right now is we're bringing regular choir practice to the estates where we have people living in the estates come together once a week to sing together. That's all. We're not saving anybody. We're just creating the conditions for people to get out of their whatever world they're in, which probably isn't so beautiful, come together as a community and sing once a week. And what I would love for this to create, or for this to result in, is at least some of them understanding after a period of time of singing that they're creative, and they're creative by nature, and it's natural to be creative. We all are. It's the most normal thing. And I wonder, what will this do to their lives? I think it will give them a lot of confidence, a lot of compassion, deeper connection to themselves. But more than anything, it will give them that ability to create the lives that they deserve. So this is something that I'm building for next year. And I'd love to tell you how it went after a year. We're going to do a lot of research to study the impact, and that's just it's just the first initiative that we're putting together. So
Wow, I'm even getting the goosebumps of your mission, and that you can feel that inner drive, and I wouldn't call it passion, inner literally strong mission and dedication to create that impact. So I'm very proud of you. And but now we live on. Yeah, we're talking about the creativity and also working with underrepresented groups. We live in the age of AI, and it's also affecting a lot our thinking, our processes of creation. How do you see at KOKO Foundation right now the change and the shift of the technology, and how does it interact with your environment and industry?
yeah, I am really what's the right provoked by AI, and what AI is doing to human beings and the world is very provocative for me. And I use that word because it can go into good, a good sort of reaction, and it can also go into a very bad reaction. Like I can be very excited about it, and I can be also terrified from it, and both can be quite intense. Um, and we talk about AI a lot at the KOKO Foundation. I think you can't ignore it. The cat's out of the bag. It's affecting the music world tremendously. It's affecting the arts tremendously. I think it's also affecting human creativity as such in a huge, huge, huge way. So there are a bunch of ways in which AI and its development informs our work. I think first and foremost, I think what AI is doing to human beings right now is it's asking us to reimagine who we are. And that's one of the reasons why the mission of the KOKO Foundation is built around creative identity, is because I think collectively we find ourselves in a collective reckoning. We're all wondering, who the hell am I right now, with when this incredibly powerful tool can do pretty much everything I've been valued for historically. What's left of me? What can I do that AI can't do? Like, how many times have you been in a conversation like that in the last year and a half? That's what everyone's talking about. But underneath that is this, I think, anxiety and sort of uncertainty around, who am I and what is my value? Like, what is my worth? What am I contributing to the world now that AI can do basically everything that I've been historically paid for up until now? And I think in that reckoning sits an opportunity, and the opportunity is, yeah, okay, we get to ask that question, and we get to answer it. And I don't think that's the entirety of the answer, but I think partly the answer sits in creativity. I think maybe, the time has come for us to realize collectively as species, to realize that we are all creative. We're creative by nature. It's natural to be creative. And now that we no longer need to be productive, we no longer will be rewarded, let's say, not maybe today, but soon, productivity, efficiency, like rationality, this over identification with the rational mind is starting to be challenged. It's starting to not be the thing that you're valued for. And so I think in that we have the opportunity to understand that we're creative. And one of the reasons why the KOKO Foundation's mission is what it is that. Because I think this is not a new idea. A lot of philosophers and artists have been saying this for centuries, that every human being is creative. But I think it's an idea whose time has come. I think the moment in time gives that opportunity, and I will fight with everything I can to get in there and hopefully plant that seed in people's hearts, and so that they can remember, that they too are creative. So that's the biggest, I think, maybe the like slightly more I don't know, identity, I guess, philosophical piece around AI. Of course, AI tools and AI tools for creativity are changing the game as well. There are tools nowadays that you don't need to spend a lot of money on gear. That's reducing barriers to entry. Like you don't need to have gone to school for decades. And as much as, of course, we grieve, the process and the craftsmanship, and I'm completely with that as well. But at the same time, these tools are making it possible for someone that's never been to a music school to actually put together a song, and call themselves a musician. Or something else. They can, it's not just music. Obviously, we're in the music world, so we look into that. But it's not just music. It's design. It's graphics. It's video. It's movies. It's everything. And so the way these tools are breaking the barriers to entry is interesting. That's the silver lining, that creates an opportunity for people with less access to be able to be creative. And that's something that with the foundation we are exploring, is how can we deploy these tools to those communities, underserved and marginalized communities, which anyways probably won't have access to AI education and AI training. How can we bring those tools to them and train them on best way to use them? Because how you use an AI tool matters. Like you can use a tool and create slop and lose your creativity and fall into like some kind of mediocre copy paste world, or you can use a tool and completely explode your creative capacity. And so one question that's very present with us at the moment is, what makes the difference? What defines which way your usage is going to go with respect to your creativity, and how can we train people to use these tools in a way that it expands their creativity rather than it flattens it, so yeah.
And what is the most challenging way right now to actually activate the community and to live your mission and to really support those people?
It's too early. It's too early for me to be able to answer this question, because we're still, I joined 4 months ago. So we're still kind of building, we're strategizing, we're conceptualizing, we're doing a lot of talking, a lot of research, a lot of brainstorming, testing, things like that. We're also fundraising at the moment, building the programs. We haven't gone out there on the field yet. So I don't know. I don't know what.
Work in progress.
Yeah,
You will
I don't
know
know what the
later when
biggest
it
challenge will
becomes
be.
more
I'm
active.
sure there will be challenges, but I still don't know what they are. Yeah.
And from the community aspect, to everyone who is listening to us today, how can they contribute or support to the journey you're creating with KOKO Foundation?
If I would love to ask your community and actually ask you as well, do you consider yourselves to be creative? What was your journey with creativity? You know, what did you love to do when you were a child, and what happened? What happened? Are you still doing it? Did you lose touch with it? You know, some people get retired and go back to it. Like my mother, for example, she retired recently and now she's painting. And you can see, like, you can see her inner child. Like, she's like a little girl when she paints, you know? And so it breaks my heart, because why do you need to have this disconnect for maybe 40, 50 years of your life, you know? So I'm always very curious to ask people what is their connection to their creativity and what is their creative identity. Like, do you consider yourself to be creative or not? And if not, why?
That's great questions to ponder through. If I think, yeah, I would consider myself to be creative, but that took time to get there, to remind myself and to relive. And funny enough, or just the reality we live in, I had the moment in my life that also my health kind of stopped me and paused me and required me to step back and to rethink. And it was so bad that I couldn't do any sports, right? My thing and my healing was through my lower back. And my whole identity, or part of my strong identity, it's all about sports. Doesn't matter, usually water sports, active sports, tennis, it's me. And I think about that. So I couldn't do anything when it comes to sports. And then, long story short, I found myself in Brazil, where I could not do also another sport, capoeira, because of the pain. But the only thing I could do is learning how to dance the Brazilian dances, and then playing with the local community, the music, going to all the festivals I can, getting integrated into that life of those weekly sessions and then concerts and everything. So that's how I think that was a pivotal moment that brought back this inner creative power. And then the rest is history. The podcast was born, and myself being way more again involved in the cultural life. So yeah, so I think we always find our way back. Better sooner than later.
But once a person is in that creative kind of flow, or engage with the creative act, it triggers um, um, I don't know, like certain waves in their lives, you know, and it takes you somewhere.
Kind of a snowball effect.
Right? Yeah. Like, it's really hard to measure that or trace it or prove it. But still, I really think this is the case, you know, just being in the joy and, you know, and that connection to yourself and beyond, you know, because creativity is always something transcendent, you know. I think takes you places afterwards, you know.
100%. 100%. It's very, I would say, rewarding to break through all those very, I would say, masculine patterns that very rational and logical, to actually bring out that lightness, that flow, that uncertainty. And talking about the life, and we already discussed a bit of this life models and this a bit maybe broken systems in a way. You are right now, what we've caught up with you last week, that you're living your best life, right? No married, no children, living in Mallorca, working, doing the work that actually is aligned with your own core values and the mission of life. Uh, so how does it feel, and how do people react to it?
It feels great. It feels great to not have to participate, in the story of like society story. It's just so liberating, to be like, well, you know what? I'm 38 years old. Like, I'm not married. I don't have children. I might not have children. And I don't take this lightly. Of course, part of me would grieve that, well, not part of me, all of me would grieve that. But at the same time, there will be good things about it. And to just be kind of like owning this, owning that this is who I am, and not having to be ashamed or embarrassed, or like trying to fit into that box where you can't really fit in it. I live with my friends. I live with two very good friends of mine. We share a house here in Mallorca, so it's like not the most conventional thing. And uh, I love, honestly, I feel like I went through so many different sort of trials and tribulations until I got to that place where I actually really love how my life is structured. I love that balance between London and Mallorca. I love where I live. I just love the life I built for myself. I'm happy in it. It wasn't easy. I didn't plan it to turn out that way. And it's just one day I was like, oh, wow, this works really well. And I think I created it on some level, even though it wasn't like a conscious sort of decision. I think some people love it, and then some people absolutely don't get it, and some people judge me for it. Some people feel sorry for me. Some people want to give me advice. Some people are worried for me. And that's fine. Like, I don't engage with it. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. If I'm in a room full of people that would not understand my lifestyle, I would be quiet about it. I wouldn't go, and because I went through that phase where I was like, I'm different and you don't get it and I'm better, And that was also silly. It was silly. Like, I'm really glad I'm not in that phase anymore. Like, if I'm surrounded by like-minded people like yourself, we can talk about it, and we can, and get like, I don't know, like, enjoy each other's journey and each other's sort of learnings and what have you discovered. I know for me, like, I can't, it's part of my DNA, like, I question the norm. I don't trust the norm. I really don't trust it. And I think, I mean, I would advise people to not trust it either, because the norm has failed us on many, many accounts, and on many occasions. So it's part of my very natural sort of interaction with the world is to question it. And some things work, but a lot of things don't work the way we were taught that they would. And so living a different life is my journey. I wanted to live a normal life at the beginning, obviously, and it was really painful to accept that that won't be my case. And now I've accepted it, and I love it. And if somebody wants to learn from me, I will be very happily share. And if they don't understand it or they judge it, I have absolutely no problem with that, and I would not rub it in anybody's face. I think, yeah, this is where I am with that.
Beautiful, fully ownership of your own designed life. And I always like to question and to challenge, is it someone not fitting into the normal life, or that's something that was pushed to us, but it's supposed to be normal? And there is no norm, right? You never know. Who said that this fast-paced life is normal?
Yeah. I mean, I
In a way.
think the concept of normal is also a very interesting conversation for me, because what's normal? And who says what normal is, and does normal even exist? And do we try to achieve normal. I think I've never been more normal. You know, like I think after whatever 3 years of fighting for, you know, for who I am, what it got me to is to being normal. Like not special, not different, not anything, just normal, like normal as I should be, as I'm designed to be. Now, how does that fit into you know, society's ideas of who I should be? Maybe it doesn't really fit, but this, as far as I'm concerned, this is the most normal I've ever been, you know.
Amazing. Natalini, we're getting closer to the end, and I have a tradition in the podcast to leave the listeners with a thought to ponder. So, what would be your final question and message to everyone who tuned in today?
Well, I mean, I think I would go back to what we just touched on a moment ago around you know, around creativity. Do you consider yourself to be creative? If yes, how do you think that's affecting your life today? And if not, why?
Beautiful. Thank you for finding time today to share your journey of how we can break stereotypes, how can we, like butterflies, to get out of a shield and find different parts and strength within ourselves to actually change the direction, to design that emotion, authenticity, and the life we want. I'm leaving the call inspired and very like with the goosebumps, and I hope same with the audience. So thank you so much for finding time, and I hope to see you soon. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Thank you everyone who
for
joined us.
having me and for letting me share my story and for appreciating my story. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who joined us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think and see you next week.